At my mother-in-law's birthday dinner in Rome, my plane ticket was missing. My husband chuckled, "Oops, guess we miscounted." As the family laughed, I calmly said, "Seems I'm not family," and walked out. 30 minutes later, they discovered I'd canceled the entire event venue and everything arrangements I have made. Their faces turned ghostly white. The espresso in my cup had gone cold, but I kept my hands wrapped around the porcelain anyway. At the head of our dining table, my husband Marco unzipped the Prada carry-on I'd bought him last Christmas and pulled out a stack of boarding passes, fanning them like playing cards. "Okay, everyone, time to make sure nobody gets left behind." His voice bounced off the walls of our penthouse, bright and performative. My mother-in-law Francesca clapped her hands together. Around the table, Marco's family leaned forward in their chairs. My father-in-law Giuseppe knocked over the sugar bowl, reaching for his coffee. The white crystals scattered across the dark wood like shattered glass, and nobody moved to clean them up. I counted the boarding passes in my husband's hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Marco pulled the first one out with a magician's flourish. "Papa!" Giuseppe's thick fingers closed around it, and Mama, of course. The second pass landed in front of Francesca with a soft tap. She pressed it to her chest. "Isabella!" My sister-in-law snatched hers mid-air, squealing about window seats. Leonardo, my husband's cousin who still owed me $50,000 for his startup, got his next. Then Aunt Julia, my mother-in-law's sister with the permanent scowl. Then Uncle Antonio and his new wife, whose name I'd never learned. Then Mrs. Bertucci, Francesca's neighbor who I'd met once, maybe twice. The passes kept coming, sliding across the table to everyone except me. My thumbnail found the chip on the underside of my coffee cup, a tiny imperfection I'd never noticed before, hidden where nobody would see unless they were really looking. My husband's hand dipped into the carry-on one more time. His fingers emerged empty. He turned the bag inside out, shaking it over the table. Loose change clattered. A chapstick rolled past the butter dish. 3 crumpled receipts fluttered down. Marco looked up, his eyes finding mine across the table, and his mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Oops." He held up the empty bag, tilting his head with practiced innocence. "Guess we miscounted." The words came out light, casual, like he was commenting on the weather. But there was something underneath, something rehearsed in the way his eyebrows lifted, in the split-second pause before he spoke, in the way his tongue touched his upper teeth when he said miscounted. This wasn't spontaneous, this was choreographed. My mother-in-law brought her linen napkin to her face. Her shoulders began to shake, her chest heaving with what she wanted everyone to believe was uncontrollable laughter. She dabbed at the corners of her eyes where no tears had actually formed, pressing the fabric against her cheekbones with theatrical precision. "Marco, you are terrible!" Francesca gasped, but her eyes weren't closed. They were open, locked on mine, sharp and glittering and waiting. Her free hand clutched her chest, fingers splayed over her heart like an opera singer hitting a high note. The performance was flawless. She'd probably practiced this too. The room exploded. Leonardo doubled over, his face turning purple, coffee spraying from his mouth onto the tablecloth. Isabella shrieked, actually shrieked, pounding the table with her palms so hard the silverware jumped. Aunt Julia wiped her eyes with her napkin, her whole body convulsing. Uncle Antonio slapped his knee twice, 3 times. His wife looked confused for a moment, glancing around, then started laughing too, slower, more uncertain, but laughing. Mrs. Bertucci giggled into her hand. My father-in-law's belly laugh boomed over everyone else. They were all performing now, each trying to laugh louder than the last, feeding off each other's cruelty like it was oxygen. Leonardo couldn't catch his breath. He wheezed, gasped, slapped the table. "Your face," he managed between choking sounds. "Your face." My coffee cup rattled against the saucer. Just barely, just enough that I had to press my palm down flat to stop it. The blood rushed to my ears, not hot but cold, like being plunged into ice water. My hands were shaking now, both of them. I pulled them into my lap where nobody could see, pressed them between my knees. My chest felt tight, compressed, like someone had wrapped piano wire around my ribs and pulled. The laughter kept coming, waves of it, crashing over me. I couldn't breathe right. Short, shallow sips of air that didn't quite reach my lungs. The sugar crystals from Giuseppe's spill were still scattered across the table. Some had stuck to my wrist. I could feel them there, sharp little points of pressure against my skin. 3 weeks ago, I'd sat in my office downtown, pen hovering over a check. $40,000. The deposit for Villa Adelina in Rome, the most exclusive venue in the city, booked solid for 2 years except for that one Saturday in September when someone had canceled. I remembered the weight of the pen in my hand, the scratch of ink on paper as I signed my name. The villa manager had sounded so excited on the phone, describing the terrace overlooking the Colosseum, the roses they'd import from Tuscany, the chef, who'd trained under Massimo Bottura. For Signora Francesca's 70th, he'd said with reverence, "We will make it perfect." I'd smiled, sitting there in my office chair, surrounded by photos of my real estate developments. This was what family did. This was what love looked like. I'd been so sure. I stood up. The laughter didn't stop, but it changed. The pitch shifted, became uncertain, strained. My chair legs scraped against hardwood, too loud in the suddenly tense air. Francesca's napkin lowered. Isabella's hand froze mid-slap against the table. Leonardo's wheezing caught in his throat. 10 pairs of eyes swung toward me, and for the first time that morning, nobody was smiling. "Seems I'm not family." My voice came out quieter than I'd intended, barely above a whisper, but in the silence that had fallen over the room like a dropped curtain, it carried. Every syllable landed with weight. I walked toward the door. 15 steps. I counted every one. My keys were on the entry table where I always left them, next to the framed wedding photo, Marco lifting me in front of the plaza fountain, both of us laughing, his mother standing in the background with her arms crossed. I picked up the keys. The metal was cold against my palm. Behind me, someone cleared their throat. A chair scraped. "Where are you going?" Marco's voice had that edge now, the one he used when I wasn't playing my part correctly. I opened the door. The morning air hit my face. Cool, sharp, smelling like rain that hadn't fallen yet. "Wait," Francesca said. "We need to leave for the airport in 30 minutes. I stepped into the hallway. "You're being ridiculous," my husband called after me. "It's just a stupid joke." The door closed behind me with a soft click. 14 seconds of silence. Then the laughter started again inside, nervous this time, forced. Someone said something in rapid Italian. Probably about me, probably something they'd said 100 times before, thinking I couldn't understand. I pulled out my phone, back pressed against the hallway wall. Inside the penthouse, someone turned up music. Probably already celebrating. Probably toasting Francesca's birthday, the party in Rome, the family trip I'd spent 2 months planning down to the last rosebud and canapé. The villa's number was already pulled up on my screen, saved under Francesca's dream. My thumb hovered over the call button. Behind the door, Isabella laughed again, that high, sharp sound like breaking glass. 3 calls, that's how many it would take. 3 calls to demolish everything. Villa Adelina first, then the catering company, then my lawyer Daniel, who'd been waiting for this call for months. My husband and his family were inside right now, probably checking their boarding passes again, probably discussing who'd sit where on the plane, probably planning which restaurants they'd visit in Rome without me. They thought I was embarrassed. They thought I was hiding in the stairwell, crying into my hands like a wounded animal. They were wrong. I wasn't embarrassed, I was doing math, and the numbers were very, very clear. The leather steering wheel was cool under my palms, steady, solid, not shaking anymore. I sat in my car in the underground parking garage, the engine still ticking as it cooled, fluorescent lights humming overhead. My phone lay face up on my lap, screen glowing in the dim space. My thumb moved across the glass without hesitation now, scrolling through contacts, past the family names I'd saved with little heart emojis I'd never use again. The cement walls around me smelled like oil and exhaust, and somewhere in the distance, a car alarm chirped twice, then went silent. I pulled up Villa Adelina's number. My nail tapped the screen once. Twice. Not nervous. Just counting the seconds before I pressed call. 5 years ago, the Plaza Ballroom had been filled with women in gowns that cost more than cars. I'd stood near the champagne fountain in a black dress I'd bought off the rack, watching the charity gala I'd donated the venue for, my family's hotel, the one my grandfather had left me when everyone else thought I was too young to handle it. Marco had approached with 2 glasses, his Italian accent thick and deliberate. "You look like someone who doesn't belong here," he'd said, handing me champagne. Too real. I'd laughed. He touched my elbow when he talked, let his hand linger on my lower back when we danced. 3 months later, he'd proposed on that same ballroom floor. I'd said yes before he'd finished the question. The ring had been modest then. He'd upgraded it 6 months into our marriage using my Amex. The video calls with my mother-in-law Francesca started after the engagement. She'd sit in her Rome apartment, always backlit so her face was in shadow, and speak in rapid Italian to Marco while I smiled beside him. "Questa Americana," she'd say, waving her hand dismissively. "Non capisce niente, this American, she understands nothing." Marco would laugh, squeeze my knee under the table. "Mama's just old-fashioned," he'd translate, though that's not what she'd said. Her eyes would find mine through the screen, cold, flat, like looking into a frozen lake. But I'd grown up with an Italian grandmother. I understood every word. I just never corrected them. My mother always said you learn more when people think you're stupid. My brother-in-law Luca had knocked on our door 8 months into the marriage, bouncing on his heels like a kid with a secret. "I've got this app idea," he'd said, spreading papers across our coffee table. "Revolutionary, just need some seed money to get started." Marco had nudged me, eyebrows raised hopefully. I'd written the check for $50,000. That was 2 years ago. Last month, I'd seen Luca post vacation photos from Santorini. When I'd asked Marco about repayment, he'd kissed my temple. "Family doesn't keep score, tesoro." My sister-in-law Isabella's wedding in Positano had cost me $43,000. I'd paid for her bridesmaids' accommodations, the welcome dinner, the yacht rental for the rehearsal. She'd never said thank you. She'd posted photos on Instagram with captions about family coming through. I wasn't tagged. The WhatsApp notifications would light up my phone at odd hours. Group chat messages, dozens of them, everyone responding in Italian. Whenever I'd ask Marco about it, he'd shrug. Just boring family stuff, Mama complaining about her neighbor. But I'd catch glimpses of his screen sometimes. Photos of family dinners I hadn't been invited to, plans being made, jokes being shared. Once I'd walked into our living room and found Marco, his sister, and his mother on FaceTime. All 3 going silent the instant I appeared. "We were just finishing," Francesca had said in English, her first English words to me in weeks. The call ended 10 seconds later. My mother-in-law's apartment renovation had started as just the bathroom. Francesca had called crying. Her toilet was leaking, the tiles were cracked, she was elderly and on a fixed income. I'd sent $30,000. The bathroom became the kitchen became new marble countertops throughout, then crown molding, then custom cabinets. "Just temporary," Marco kept saying, "just until Mama gets her pension sorted out." That was 18 months ago. Last week I'd seen the interior design photos she'd posted, my marble countertops tagged with the designer's handle, no mention of who'd paid. The comments were all in Italian. "Che bellezza, sei fortunata, how beautiful, you're so lucky." Every request from my husband came wrapped in velvet. "You're so generous, tesoro," he'd whisper, kissing my neck while his hand found my wallet. "Ti amo. You make my family so happy." His fingers would trace circles on my wrist, his voice dropping to that intimate register that had worked so well 5 years ago in the Plaza Ballroom. Just this once. Just this one time. Except it was never just once. His cousin needed help with rent, his aunt needed surgery, his father needed a new car, and always, Marco's voice in my ear, "This is what love looks like, this is what family does." I'd known for a while. Maybe always known. The way my chest would tighten when my phone rang and Marco's name appeared, the way I'd started checking my bank statements 3 times a day, watching the numbers drop, the way I'd lie awake at 3 a.m., listening to my husband snore, doing calculations in my head. 50,000 here, 40,000 there, 30, 20, 15. But I'd kept signing the checks anyway, kept smiling, kept playing the role of the generous American wife, because love was supposed to be sacrifice, because maybe, eventually, they'd see me as family, because I was terrified that without my money, I was nothing to them, and being nothing to them meant being alone. 6 months ago, I'd started the folder. Just a simple Excel file, password protected, backed up to 3 different cloud services. Date, amount, recipient, purpose, every check I'd written, every transfer I'd made, every family dinner I'd paid for, every plane ticket, every renovation, every loan that would never be repaid. I'd labeled it household expenses so Marco would never look twice if he saw it. But at night, after he'd fallen asleep, I'd open it on my laptop, the blue glow illuminating my face in the darkness. I'd add another line, update the running total at the bottom. $340,000. That's what 3 years of being family had cost me. I hadn't been building a marriage. I'd been documenting a theft. My phone buzzed in my hand. Text from Marco, "Where are you? We need to leave now." I looked at the message. Then I looked at the Villa Adelina number still pulled up on my screen. My thumb hovered over it. Behind me, the garage elevator dinged. Footsteps echoed. Sharp, rapid, coming closer. I pressed call. The line rang once. My car door handle rattled. Someone trying to open it. I'd locked it. Another rattle, more insistent. "Open the door!" Marco's voice muffled through the glass. The phone kept ringing in my ear. His fist hit the window. "Apri la porta!" Second ring. His face appeared at my window, red and twisted. Third ring. "Buongiorno, Villa Adelina?" My phone glowed in the dim underground garage, the screen casting blue light across my knuckles. The contact name read Francesca's Dream with a little cake emoji I'd added 2 months ago when I'd first called to book the venue. My thumb hovered over it. The cement walls around me seemed to press closer, the air thick with the smell of motor oil and something metallic. Above, fluorescent lights buzzed and flickered. One of them was dying, strobing in irregular patterns that made shadows dance across my dashboard. My husband's cologne still lingered in the car, that Creed Aventus I'd bought him, $445 a bottle, now making my stomach turn. I pressed the contact. The international dial tone purred in my ear, that distinctive European double ring that sounded like a heartbeat. "Pronto, Villa Adelina, this is Stefano speaking." The voice burst through the speaker, bright and musical. I could hear activity in the background, dishes clattering, someone shouting in Italian about the flower delivery, classical music playing softly underneath it all. "Signora Chen, perfetto timing, I was just about to call you. The roses arrived from Tuscany this morning, 300 stems exactly as you requested. The champagne tower is being assembled now, and our chef, he is already here preparing the tartare station. Everything is coming together beautifully for Signora Francesca's celebration." His enthusiasm crackled through the line. I could picture him in his office overlooking the Roman courtyard, probably in his crisp white shirt, probably smiling at the thought of the generous tip he'd received tonight. "Stefano." My voice came out flat, mechanical. I watched my breath fog the window. "I need to cancel the reservation today, right now, this moment." The background noise on his end didn't stop, but I heard his breathing change, a small intake, a pause. 3 seconds of silence where I could feel him trying to process what I'd said, trying to make it make sense with the roses and the champagne tower, and the chef already preparing his stations. But Signora." Stefano's voice had lost its music. Papers rustled. A keyboard clicked. "The deposit, it is non-refundable. And the event, it begins in 8 hours. The guests, they are already traveling. Some are perhaps already in Rome. We have staff arriving. The flowers are arranged. He stopped. Started again. "Signora, perhaps you need to just delay. We can move to next month, next year. We can work something." I understand completely about the deposit. I traced my finger along the steering wheel, following the stitching in the leather. $40,000, non-refundable. I know. Cancel it anyway. Every detail, the roses, the champagne tower, the tartare station, the string quartet, the custom menu cards, the birthday cake with the gold leaf, everything. I want it all canceled. Now. My nail caught on a loose thread in the leather. I pulled it, watched it unravel slightly. Something about that felt satisfying. The keyboard sounds started immediately. Rapid, aggressive clicking that came through the phone like rainfall. Stefano was breathing heavily now, muttering in Italian under his breath. "Madonna. $40,000. Click, click, click." Each keystroke was erasing something. The roses, click. The champagne, click. The musicians, click. 3 months of planning disappearing line by line. "Signora, I must tell you this is most unusual. In 20 years managing Villa Adelina, I have never..." Click. "The cancellation is processing now. You will receive confirmation via email within the hour." Click, click. I am very sorry this event will not happen." He didn't sound sorry. He sounded bewildered, maybe a little frightened. Good. My finger hesitated over the end call button. 3 seconds, maybe 4. Outside my window, a woman and her daughter walked past, the mother's hand on the girl's shoulder, both laughing about something, the daughter holding a shopping bag from Bloomingdale's. They moved through the parking garage like it was the safest place in the world. The mother tucked a strand of hair behind the daughter's ear. The gesture was so casual, so natural, so easy. I'd never seen Francesca touch anyone like that. My mother-in-law's touches were always performative. The air kisses that never touched skin, the hand on the arm that was really a grip, the embrace that pushed you away as much as it pulled you in. I watched the mother and daughter disappear behind a concrete pillar, their laughter echoing back. Grazie, Stefano. I ended the call. The silence in the car was immediate and complete. My hand was steady as I scrolled to the next contact, Michelin Dreams, the catering company I'd spent 6 weeks coordinating with, tasting menus, adjusting portions, discussing the proper way to serve burrata. They'd ordered white truffles from Alba, shipped them fresh this morning, probably sitting in their kitchen right now, fragrant and expensive and about to be wasted. I pressed call. The phone rang once. My reflection stared back at me from the rearview mirror, mascara still perfect, lipstick still in place, not a hair out of position. I looked exactly the same as I had an hour ago at the breakfast table, but something behind my eyes had changed. Something had hardened, crystallized, turned sharp. Bella Cucina Catering, this is Antonio. Another cheerful voice. Another man about to have his day ruined. I opened my mouth to speak. Behind me, the garage elevator dinged. Footsteps echoed across the concrete. Fast, purposeful, multiple sets. Men's dress shoes. I knew that sound. I knew exactly whose feet were in those shoes. Hello? Is anyone there? Antonio asked. The footsteps got louder, closer. 30 feet away, 20. I could see movement in my side mirror. My husband's family spreading out like they were hunting something. Leonardo going left. Uncle Antonio going right. Marco straight down the middle, his face visible now in the fluorescent light. Jaw clenched, phone in his hand, eyes scanning the rows of cars. He hadn't seen me yet. Signora? Hello? The footsteps were 15 feet away. 10. My husband's head turned. Our eyes met in my side mirror, his mouth opened. I pressed the lock button. Every door clicked shut simultaneously. Marco started running. My husband Marco's fist hit my car window again, the sound sharp and hollow in the concrete garage. I turned my back to him and pressed call on the second number. Bella Cucina Catering, this is Antonio. The chef's voice exploded through the speaker, warm and effusive. Signora Chen, perfetto timing. I'm standing in my kitchen right now looking at the most beautiful white truffles you have ever seen. From Alba, just arrived this morning, each one the size of a golf ball. And the burrata, Madonna, it is still warm from the farm. The prosciutto di Parma, aged 36 months. Behind me, Marco was shouting something, his voice muffled through the glass. I turned up the phone volume. Antonio continued, oblivious, his Italian accent getting thicker with his excitement. We're beginning the tartare preparation now. Everything is exactly as you specified, every detail. This will be a meal Signora Francesca talks about for years, I promise you this. Antonio. I watched Marco in my rearview mirror, watched him pull out his phone, probably calling his mother, probably trying to figure out what was happening. I need to cancel the catering order. All of it. Right now. The silence on the other end lasted 3 heartbeats. 4. Behind me, Leonardo had joined Marco, both of them circling my car like sharks. But Signora Chen. Antonio's voice had lost all its music. The white truffles arrived from Alba this morning. They are 2,000 euros per kilo. We have already begun preparation. The event is in... He stopped. I heard him breathing, heard him trying to find words that would change my mind. The deposit, it is $25,000. Non-refundable. You understand this, yes? I understand perfectly. My finger traced the climate control buttons on my dashboard, not adjusting anything, just needing something to touch. Cancel everything anyway. The truffles, the burrata, the prosciutto, the tartare stations, the dessert course, all of it. I paused, watching Marco through the mirror. He had his phone pressed to his ear now, gesturing wildly with his free hand. How long will it take you to process the cancellation? Antonio's keyboard started clicking, slower than Stefano's had been, more reluctant. Each click sounded like a small bone breaking. $25,000, gone. Added to the villa's $40,000. $65,000. 15 minutes. That was $4.333 per second. I'd made more than that in my first real estate deal, but I'd never spent money this fast. Never deleted this much with such precision. My thumb moved to the third contact before Antonio had finished processing. Daniel Reeves, attorney at law with a briefcase emoji next to it. He answered on the first ring. I wondered when you'd call. Daniel's voice was calm, almost resigned. No surprise, no questions, just that flat, knowing tone of someone who'd seen the ending before the movie finished. I have the papers ready. Been ready since you came to my office 3 months ago and asked me to draft them just in case. Want me to file them now? In my rearview mirror, Uncle Antonio had joined Marco and Leonardo. The three of them stood in a semicircle behind my car, blocking my exit. They thought they'd trapped me. They didn't realize I could sit here all day. File everything. Legal separation, freeze all joint accounts, everything we discussed. I heard Daniel's chair creak as he stood, heard his footsteps across his office floor. The accounts will be frozen within the hour, he said. Papers rustled, a drawer opened. Separation papers will be filed by end of business today. He'll be served by tomorrow morning. You're sure about this? No cooling off period? No, file them, Daniel. My voice came out harder than I'd intended. He went quiet for a moment. Then, consider it done. And for what it's worth, you should have called me 2 years ago. The line went dead. 3 months ago, I'd sat in my home office at 2 a.m. while Marco snored in our bedroom. The apartment had been dark except for my laptop screen, casting blue light across stacks of documents I'd been slowly, methodically photographing. Bank statements, property deeds, investment portfolios. Everything in my name, everything I'd brought into this marriage, everything I'd built before Marco. I'd updated passwords on my accounts, changed security questions, moved original documents to a safety deposit box Marco didn't know existed. I'd done it all in silence, in darkness, while he slept 20 feet away. I'd known then. Some part of me had known for months, maybe years. I just needed one final push to act on it. The fourth call connected before I'd fully decided to make it. Prestige Security and Locksmith. This is Mike speaking. His voice was gruff, professional. I need locks changed. Today. Within the hour if possible. Penthouse apartment, 3 entry points, high security deadbolts. I rattled off my address. Mike whistled low. That's going to cost you premium rates for rush service. We talking domestic situation here? Yes. Say no more. I can have a team there in 45 minutes. I could almost hear him grinning. Nobody gets in after we're done. Not even with a battering ram. Marco's face appeared at my driver's side window, inches from the glass. His palm pressed flat against it, leaving a smear. His mouth was moving, forming words I couldn't hear and didn't need to. In my mind I could see them, my husband's family, probably pulling up to the airport right now, checking their boarding passes, laughing about my humiliation, planning their Roman holiday. They had no idea. No idea that the villa had been canceled. No idea that the catering had been canceled. No idea that by the time they landed in Rome there would be nothing waiting except their own reflections in locked villa gates. My husband would check his bank account somewhere over the Atlantic and find it frozen. His mother would arrive at Villa Adelina to find dark windows and an apologetic manager. They'd arrive in Rome to nothing. No party, no wife, no money. Just the echoing sound of consequences they'd been deaf to for 3 years. Marco yanked on my door handle. Once, twice, 3 times. Then his fist hit the window again, hard enough that I wondered if he'd hurt his hand. I turned the key in the ignition. The engine purred to life. My phone buzzed with an email notification. Daniel, papers filed. It's done. I put the car in reverse. Marco jumped back. His face in my rearview mirror was white, mouth open, finally understanding. I rolled down my window, just an inch, just enough. Tell your mother, I said, my voice carrying across the garage, happy birthday. Then I drove away. Marco's cousin Leonardo wheezed again, doubled over in the airport check-in line, reliving the morning's entertainment. The look on her face, he gasped, clutching his boarding pass. When you said guess we miscounted, perfetto! He made the chef's kiss gesture, fingers bunched, then exploding outward. My sister-in-law Isabella giggled into her hand, her Gucci carry-on slung over her shoulder. I almost felt bad for a second. Almost. My father-in-law Giuseppe clapped Marco on the back, proud, like his son had just scored a winning goal. The morning sunlight streamed through the terminal windows, catching on Francesca's Cartier bracelet as she adjusted her silk scarf. She looked radiant, glowing, younger than her 70 years. "My boy is so clever," my mother-in-law said, loud enough for people in the neighboring line to hear. "So clever." Marco grinned, that same smirk he'd worn at breakfast, still riding the high of his perfectly executed joke. Marco's phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out, still smiling, probably expecting a text from Uncle Antonio asking about the gate number. The smile froze. His thumb swiped across the screen once, twice, like maybe he'd misread it. The subject line glowed, account alert, access restricted pending legal review. His eyebrows drew together. He tapped the notification. A wall of text appeared. Formal and cold, all joint accounts with Chen A have been frozen by court order effective immediately. Contact legal representative for details. His thumb moved faster now, opening his banking app. The screen loaded, red text everywhere. Access denied, access denied, access denied. He tried my personal account, the one he'd had access to for 3 years. Account not found. His fingers started trembling. "Amore? What is it?" Marco didn't hear me. He was already calling, phone pressed to his ear so hard it left a red mark on his cheek. The line rang once, twice, 3 times. My voicemail picked up, that professionally detached recording I'd made years ago for work calls. "You've reached Alexandra Chen. I'm unable to take your call right now. Please leave a detailed message." Beep. Marco's mouth opened but nothing came out. He hung up, tried again. Same result. His breathing had changed, shorter, sharper, like he'd just sprinted upstairs. Francesca was watching him now, her smile fading at the edges. "Cosa se non va?" she asked in Italian. "What's wrong?" Marco's face was draining of color, turning that sickly gray-white of uncooked dough. Leonardo's phone chimed. Then Isabella's, then Giuseppe's, then Francesca's, then Aunt Julia's, all at once, like a chorus. They all looked down at their screens in unison, a choreographed movement they hadn't rehearsed. Leonardo read aloud first, his voice bright and unsuspecting. "Email from Villa Adelina." His eyes scanned ahead. His voice faltered. Stopped. Started again, quieter now. "We regret to inform you that the reservation for September 14th has been canceled at the client's request. The deposit of $40,000 has been forfeited per cancellation policy. We apologize for any—" He looked up at Marco, then at Francesca. "This is a mistake, right? Some kind of spam?" Francesca snatched her phone, reading it herself, her lips moving silently. Her fingers scrolled faster, faster. No, this cannot be. The villa. My birthday villa. Her voice was rising, getting shrill. People in other lines were starting to turn. A mother pulled her child closer. Marco's phone buzzed again. Another email notification. Then another. They were coming rapid fire now, lighting up his screen like a slot machine hitting jackpot. He opened the second one. Bella Cucina Catering, order cancellation confirmation, total forfeited $25,000. His hand was shaking so badly he almost dropped the phone. The third notification appeared before he'd finished reading the second. Fiore Romano Florist, cancellation processed. Fourth notification, Quattro Strings Quartet, event cancelled. Fifth, sixth, seventh. The dominoes were falling in real time, each one a new catastrophe. My mother-in-law's scream cut through the airport terminal like a siren. "No! No! Quella puttana!" Her voice echoed off the high ceilings. Security guards 20 yards away stopped mid-conversation, their heads swiveling toward the sound. Francesca was holding her phone in both hands now, shaking it like she could physically force the words to change. "Ha cancellato tutto! She'd cancelled everything! Everything!" Passengers stopped walking. A woman with a stroller detoured around them. 2 teenage boys pulled out their phones, probably recording. Giuseppe tried to put his hand on his wife's shoulder, but she shoved him away. "My party, my birthday, my—" Her voice cracked, broke, dissolved into rapid Italian cursing that made the elderly couple behind them gasp. Marco was stabbing at his phone now, opening every app, trying every password. His checking account, access denied. Savings, access denied. Investment portfolio, access denied. Credit cards, invalid login. He tried calling his bank. Hold music. He tried my lawyer's office. An automated message in a woman's smooth, clinical voice. This is Daniel Reeves's office. If you're calling regarding the Chen Romano separation case, please note that all communications must go through official legal channels. Do not contact Ms. Chen directly. Marco's knees actually buckled. Leonardo caught him. What is happening? My cousin-in-law whispered. What did she do? Isabella was crying now, mascara running, because somehow she'd made this about herself. Uncle Antonio had his phone out, calling someone, anyone who might make this make sense. I sat in my car 3 miles away, engine idling at a red light, imagining every moment. I could see it so clearly, Francesca's face turning red, then purple. Marco's hands shaking, the security guards approaching, the whispers from strangers, the boarding passes still clutched in their hands, useless tickets to a party that no longer existed. I hadn't needed to be there. I'd orchestrated every beat, timed every notification, predicted every reaction. They'd spent 3 years teaching me their patterns, their weaknesses, their pressure points. Now I was pressing them all at once. The light turned green. I didn't move yet. Let them sit in it a moment longer. Let them feel what I'd felt this morning, that cold, sinking realization that you've been played, that you never mattered, that you were only ever valued for what you could provide. My phone was silent now, all calls made, all dominoes falling. I pressed the accelerator and drove toward my lawyer's office, leaving them behind in every sense of the word. They'd arrive in Rome to nothing. But I was driving toward everything. The iron gates of Villa Adelina stood locked, chains wrapped through the ornate scrollwork like a bad joke. 50 family members clustered on the cobblestone street outside, their designer luggage scattered around them like abandoned props. The Roman sun beat down mercilessly, 34 degrees Celsius, the kind of heat that made silk dresses cling and suit jackets feel like straitjackets. Uncle Tommaso, 83 years old, leaned heavily on his cane, his formal navy suit already dark with sweat under the arms. His wife fanned herself with her boarding pass, the paper wilting in her grip. Cousin Maria held a wrapped gift box, silver paper, elaborate bow, shifting it from hand to hand as the ribbons started to sag. Behind the gates, the villa sat silent and dark. No lights, no music, no staff rushing to open the entrance, just empty windows reflecting the afternoon sun like dead eyes. Aunt Julia's phone rang first, shrill in the quiet street. She answered in rapid Italian, her free hand gesturing even though the person on the other end couldn't see her. Francesca? Dove sei? Siamo all'indirizzo che ci hai dato. Where are you? We're at the address you gave us. Silence on the other end. Julia's face changed, her mouth opening then closing. Francesca? Mi senti? Can you hear me? More silence. Then Francesca's voice came through, so quiet that Julia had to press the phone harder against her ear. Non si festa. There's no party. Cosa? Julia's voice rose. Come non si festa? What do you mean there's no party? But Francesca had already hung up. Julia stood there, phone still pressed to her ear, staring at nothing while her husband waited, while everyone waited, while the truth slowly crystallized in the Roman heat. Marco sat in a taxi 20 minutes away, phone pressed between his shoulder and ear, his fingers stabbing through reservation apps with increasing desperation. Do you have any tables available tonight? Any? The hostess at Ristorante Aroma sighed. Signor, I already told you, we are fully booked. It is Saturday night in Rome. Everything is booked. Click. Marco dialed the next number. La Pergola, fully booked. Il Pagliaccio, fully booked. Armando al Pantheon, fully booked. His shirt was soaked through, sticking to his back against the taxi's leather seat. In the front, the driver kept glancing in the rearview mirror, probably wondering if this American was going to pay the meter that had been running for 40 minutes, while Marco called every restaurant in Rome. Francesca sat beside her son, perfectly still, staring out the window at the passing street scenes. Couples walking hand in hand, families laughing at outdoor cafes, a birthday celebration visible through a restaurant window. Her reflection in the glass looked hollow, ancient. Marco's phone was vibrating continuously now, the family group chat exploding with messages faster than he could read them. Cousin Paolo. What is happening? Aunt Maria, we flew from Milano for this. Uncle Tommaso's daughter, my father is 83 years old and standing in the heat, someone explain now. Leonardo's message appeared, Marco, people are asking me about the money I borrowed. They're saying she might want it back. You said she'd never, the message cut off, then deleted, then reappeared in private chat, pleading. You said she'd never ask for repayment. You said she was desperate to be family. You said... Marco turned off his phone. The screen went black. In that black reflection he could see his mother's face, still staring out the window, not speaking, barely breathing. Outside Villa Adelina, Giuseppe was trying to keep order, his voice booming over the crowd. Everyone, please! Francesca will explain when she arrives. There has been some misunderstanding. But 3 cousins had already called for taxis. The elderly relatives were sitting on their luggage now, too tired to stand. Someone's gift had fallen, the wrapping paper torn, revealing an expensive bottle of champagne that no one would drink. Francesca's sister spotted the approaching taxi, waved her arms. Eccola! There she is! The crowd pressed forward as Francesca emerged, her silk scarf askew, her makeup smudged. She looked smaller somehow, shrunken. Mi dispiace, she started, her voice cracking. I'm sorry. The crowd went quiet, waiting. She switched to broken English, maybe wanting to maintain some dignity, maybe hoping it would hurt less, in a language that wasn't her mother tongue. There is no party. The reservation, it has been cancelled. I did not know until today. A delivery van pulled up at that exact moment, perfectly timed like a punchline. 2 men emerged carrying a cake, 3 tiers, covered in elaborate sugar flowers, topped with Buon Compleanno Francesca 70 in gold script. They looked at the crowd, looked at the locked gates, looked back at the crowd. Delivery for Chen? One asked uncertainly. For the birthday party? Nobody moved. The cake sat there between them all, beautiful and useless, a monument to a celebration that would never happen. Marco's brother Luca stepped forward, his voice sharp. You said she was handling everything. You said the venue was secured. You said... She cancelled it, Marco shouted back. Don't you understand? She cancelled everything. His voice echoed off the villa walls. When? Uncle Antonio demanded. When did she do this? Marco's mouth opened, closed. He didn't have an answer that wouldn't make him look like exactly what he was. I imagined it all from 3,000 miles away, sitting in my lawyer's office, signing papers. The locked gates, the confused relatives, the heat, the shame, the birthday cake with nowhere to go. Daniel had asked if I wanted to reconsider. There was still time to reverse some of it, make some calls, salvage something. I'd signed another page instead. Francesca had wanted Rome for her birthday. She'd gotten Rome, just not the version she'd imagined. She'd gotten locked gates and broken English apologies and family members doing mental calculations about loans they'd never planned to repay. She'd gotten humiliation served on cobblestones instead of china. She'd gotten to stand in formal wear in summer heat explaining to 50 people why there was no party. Fair trade, I thought, pressing the pen harder against paper. More than fair. Generous even, because I could have done so much worse. The gates could have opened. I could have been there waiting. I could have handed her an itemized bill for 3 years of playing ATM to people who never saw me as family. Instead, I gave her nothing, which was exactly what she'd always thought I was worth. The signature on the legal separation papers looked strong, confident, not shaky at all. Outside Daniel's office window, New York traffic hummed past, people going about their Saturday completely unaware that 3,000 miles away, a birthday party was dying in the Roman sun. My phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number, "You've destroyed everything." I deleted it without responding. Everything was already destroyed. I was just the one who'd finally stopped pretending to hold it together. The iron gates of Villa Adelina stood locked, chains wrapped through the ornate scrollwork like a bad joke. 50 family members clustered on the cobblestone street outside, their designer luggage scattered around them like abandoned props. The Roman sun beat down mercilessly, 34 degrees Celsius, the kind of heat that made silk dresses cling and suit jackets feel like straitjackets. Uncle Tommaso, 83 years old, leaned heavily on his cane, his formal navy suit already dark with sweat under the arms. His wife fanned herself with her boarding pass, the paper wilting in her grip. Cousin Maria held a wrapped gift box, silver paper, elaborate bow, shifting it from hand to hand as the ribbons started to sag. Behind the gates, The villa sat silent and dark. No lights, no music, no staff rushing to open the entrance, just empty windows reflecting the afternoon sun like dead eyes. Aunt Julia's phone rang first, shrill in the quiet street. She answered in rapid Italian, her free hand gesturing even though the person on the other end couldn't see her. Francesca? Dove sei? Siamo all'indirizzo che ci hai detto. Where are you? We're at the address you gave us. Silence on the other end. Julia's face changed, her mouth opening then closing. Francesca? Mi senti? Can you hear me? More silence. Then Francesca's voice came through, so quiet that Julia had to press the phone harder against her ear. Non c'è festa. There's no party. Cosa? Julia's voice rose. Come non c'è festa? What do you mean there's no party? But Francesca had already hung up. Julia stood there, phone still pressed to her ear, staring at nothing while her husband waited, while everyone waited, while the truth slowly crystallized in the Roman heat. Marco sat in a taxi 20 minutes away, phone pressed between his shoulder and ear, his finger stabbing through reservation apps with increasing desperation. Do you have any tables available tonight? Any? The hostess at Ristorante Aroma sighed. Signore, I already told you, we are fully booked. It is Saturday night in Rome. Everything is booked. Click. Marco dialed the next number. La Pergola. Fully booked. Il Pagliaccio. Fully booked. Armando al Pantheon. Fully booked. His shirt was soaked through, sticking to his back against the taxi's leather seat. In the front, the driver kept glancing in the rearview mirror, probably wondering if this American was going to pay the meter that had been running for 40 minutes, while Marco called every restaurant in Rome. Francesca sat beside her son, perfectly still, staring out the window at the passing street scenes, couples walking hand in hand, families laughing at outdoor cafes, a birthday celebration visible through a restaurant window. Her reflection in the glass looked hollow, ancient. Marco's phone was vibrating continuously now, the family group chat exploding with messages faster than he could read them. Cousin Paolo, what is happening? Aunt Maria, we flew from Milano for this? Uncle Tommaso's daughter, my father is 83 years old and standing in the heat, someone explain now. Leonardo's message appeared. Marco, people are asking me about the money I borrowed. They're saying she might want it back. You said she'd never. The message cut off, then deleted, then reappeared in private chat pleading, you said she'd never ask for repayment. You said she was desperate to be family. You said. Marco turned off his phone. The screen went black. In that black reflection, he could see his mother's face, still staring out the window, not speaking, barely breathing. Outside Villa Adelina, Giuseppe was trying to keep order, his voice booming over the crowd. Everyone, please. Francesca will explain when she arrives. There has been some misunderstanding. But 3 cousins had already called for taxis. The elderly relatives were sitting on their luggage now, too tired to stand. Someone's gift had fallen, the wrapping paper torn, revealing an expensive bottle of champagne that no one would drink. Francesca's sister spotted the approaching taxi, waved her arms. Eccola, there she is. The crowd pressed forward as Francesca emerged, her silk scarf askew, her makeup smudged. She looked smaller somehow, shrunken. Mi dispiace, she started, her voice cracking. I'm sorry. The crowd went quiet, waiting. She switched to broken English, maybe wanting to maintain some dignity, maybe hoping it would hurt less, in a language that wasn't her mother tongue. There is no party. The reservation. It has been cancelled. I did not know until today. A delivery van pulled up at that exact moment, perfectly timed like a punchline. 2 men emerged carrying a cake, 3 tiers, covered in elaborate sugar flowers, topped with Buon compleanno Francesca 70 in gold script. They looked at the crowd, looked at the locked gates, looked back at the crowd. Delivery for Chen? One asked uncertainly. For the birthday party? Nobody moved. The cake sat there between them all, beautiful and useless, a monument to a celebration that would never happen. Marco's brother Luca stepped forward, his voice sharp. You said she was handling everything. You said the venue was secured. You said. She canceled it, Marco shouted back. Don't you understand? She canceled everything. His voice echoed off the villa walls. When? Uncle Antonio demanded. When did she do this? Marco's mouth opened, closed. He didn't have an answer that wouldn't make him look like exactly what he was. I imagined it all from 3,000 miles away, sitting in my lawyer's office, signing papers. The locked gates, the confused relatives, the heat, the shame, the birthday cake with nowhere to go. Daniel had asked if I wanted to reconsider. There was still time to reverse some of it, make some calls, salvage something. I'd signed another page instead. Francesca had wanted Rome for her birthday. She'd gotten Rome, just not the version she'd imagined. She'd gotten locked gates and broken English apologies and family members doing mental calculations about loans they'd never planned to repay. She'd gotten humiliation served on cobblestones instead of china. She'd gotten to stand in formal wear in summer heat, explaining to 50 people why there was no party. Fair trade, I thought, pressing the pen harder against paper. More than fair, generous even. Because I could have done so much worse. The gates could have opened. I could have been there waiting. I could have handed her an itemized bill for 3 years of playing ATM to people who never saw me as family. Instead, I gave her nothing. Which was exactly what she'd always thought I was worth. The signature on the legal separation papers looked strong, confident, not shaky at all. Outside Daniel's office window, New York traffic hummed past, people going about their Saturday, completely unaware that 3,000 miles away, a birthday party was dying in the Roman sun. My phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. "You've destroyed everything." I deleted it without responding. Everything was already destroyed. I was just the one who'd finally stopped pretending to hold it together. The manila folders were stacked on Daniel's conference table like a paper skyline. 12 of them, arranged by date, each one fat with receipts and bank statements and screenshots I'd collected over 3 years. The conference room smelled like leather and coffee gone cold, the kind of room where marriages came to die in triplicate. Across from me, Marco sat next to his lawyer, a man named Vincent, something with a cheap suit and a briefcase held together with duct tape. My husband, soon-to-be ex-husband, had his hands folded on the table, knuckles white, that vein in his temple pulsing the way it did when he was trying very hard not to explode. Daniel stood at the head of the table with a laser pointer, my forensic accountant's report projected on the screen behind him, numbers glowing in red and black like a crime scene photo. "Let's start with contributions to the marriage." Daniel clicked to the first slide. A spreadsheet appeared, color-coded, itemized, brutally specific. Mr. Romano's financial contributions over 36 months. He circled a number at the bottom with his laser pointer, $4,217.63. Marco's lawyer leaned forward, squinting. "That's groceries," Daniel continued, his voice flat, clinical. "Specifically, Mr. Romano's share of groceries purchased jointly, calculated at exactly 50% of bills where he insisted on splitting costs." Click. Next slide. Ms. Chen's contributions. The number made Vincent Something's pen stop moving. $340,127.89. The decimal points felt important somehow, precise, like I'd counted every penny, which I had. Marco's jaw clenched, his hands unfolded, refolded. Under the table I could see his knee bouncing, that nervous tick he got when lying to clients, when his mother called asking for money, when he'd promised me just one more time. Vincent cleared his throat. "Your Honor, gentlemen," he caught himself, glanced at me, "and Miss Chen. My client contests these figures. Many of these were gifts given willingly in the spirit of gifts." Daniel didn't let him finish. He pulled out folder number 3, opened it with theatrical precision. "Let's discuss gifts." Inside were printouts of our prenuptial agreement, highlighted in yellow, my signature and Marco's signature visible at the bottom. Miss Chen insisted on a prenup before marriage. Mr. Romano signed it. Clause 7, paragraph 2, all assets, properties, and investments brought into the marriage by either party shall remain the separate property of that party. No commingling of funds shall be construed as intent to share ownership. Daniel looked up. Mr. Romano is entitled to exactly what he brought in, which, per his own tax returns from the year of marriage, was $1,247 in a checking account, and a leased Audi he could no longer afford the payments on. Vincent shuffled papers, looking for something that wasn't there. But the family contributions, his mother's apartment renovations, his brother's business loan, surely those were intended as loans? Daniel smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. He clicked to the next slide. Email chains. Marco's email to his brother Luca, dated 14 months ago, timestamped 2:47 a.m. I remembered that night. Marco had told me he was emailing a client. Daniel read it aloud. Keep asking her for money. She never says no. She's desperate to fit in with the family. Mom says to bleed her dry while she's still useful. The words hung in the air. Vincent's pen had stopped moving entirely. Marco was staring at the table, that vein pulsing faster now. My hands were perfectly still in my lap, but underneath, my nails were digging crescents into my palms. Click. Next slide. Text message screenshots, dated across the last 2 years. Green bubbles in Italian. Francesca to Marco. La mucca americana paga per tutto. The American cow pays for everything. Another text. È così stupida. Non sa che la stiamo usando. She's so stupid she doesn't know we're using her. Another. Continua a sorridere e prendere I suoi soldi. Keep smiling and taking her money. Daniel didn't translate. He didn't need to. He just let them sit there on the screen, damning and clear. But then he glanced at me, eyebrow raised slightly. A question. I nodded once. Permission granted. Mr. Romano, Daniel said quietly. Your mother texted these to you in Italian because she assumed Miss Chen didn't speak the language. Is that correct? Marco finally looked up. His eyes found mine across the table. I watched him do the math, watched realization dawn like a slow-motion car crash. His mouth opened, closed. He stopped, started again. You speak Italian? It wasn't really a question. It was an accusation, a betrayal, like somehow I'd been the one lying. I leaned forward slightly, keeping my voice soft, almost gentle. Parlo italiano da quando avevo 6 anni, Marco. I've spoken Italian since I was 6, Marco. Mia nonna mi ha insegnato. Ogni parola, ogni insulto, ho capito tutto. My grandmother taught me, every word, every insult. I understood everything. The color drained from his face in real time, moving from his cheeks to his jaw to his neck, leaving him wax pale under the fluorescent lights. Vincent was whispering urgently in Marco's ear now, but my husband wasn't listening. He was still staring at me like I'd pulled off a mask and revealed something monstrous underneath. You knew, he finally said, this whole time, every family dinner, every conversation, every insult? I finished for him. Every scheme, every joke at my expense? Yes, every single one. My voice didn't rise, didn't need to. The truth was loud enough. Daniel clicked to another slide. More texts, more emails, a particularly vicious voicemail from Isabella about how the stupid American had paid for her wedding dress alterations. Marco put his head in his hands. His shoulders started shaking. Whether from rage or shame, I couldn't tell, didn't care. Daniel checked his watch. Gentlemen, we've covered approximately 30% of the evidence. Would you like to continue? Or should we schedule another session? Vincent was already packing his briefcase. I need to speak with my client. Alone. Now. He stood, yanking Marco's arm. We'll reconvene next week. But Marco wasn't moving. He was still staring at me with this look. Not anger now, something worse. Something like fear. You planned this, he said slowly. All of it. The breakfast. The timing. He stopped. His eyes widened. How long? I tilted my head, let him wait. 3 seconds. 5. How long have you been planning this? He asked again, his voice cracking. I stood, smoothing my skirt, gathering my purse. At the door I paused, looked back. Da quando hai smesso di amarmi, se mai lo hai fatto, since you stopped loving me, if you ever did. The door clicked shut behind me with a sound like a vault locking. Through the frosted glass I could see Marco's silhouette collapse forward onto the table. Vincent's shadow paced. Daniel gathered his folders with satisfied efficiency. I walked toward the elevator, my heels clicking against marble, each step echoing in the empty hallway. Behind me, something crashed, Marco throwing something, probably. A voice shouted. The conference room door opened. Wait! Marco's voice, desperate, breaking. Wait! We need to talk about... The elevator doors slid open. I stepped inside, pressed the button for the lobby, watched Marco running down the hall toward me, one hand outstretched. The doors started to close. He was 10 feet away. 5, 3. Our eyes met one last time. The doors sealed shut. The elevator descended, carrying me down away, toward ground level and sunlight, and a life where nobody called me a cow in a language they thought I couldn't understand. My reflection in the polished elevator doors looked calm, composed, victorious. Only my hands told the truth. still clenched, nails still digging crescents, still holding on to 3 years of swallowed insults. But I was letting go now. Floor by floor, I was letting go. The elevator chimed, ground floor, the doors opened. I stepped out into the lobby, into afternoon light streaming through glass walls, into the rest of my life. Behind me, 15 floors up, Marco was probably still in that hallway, probably still trying to figure out what just happened. Let him wonder. Let him calculate. Let him realize that the quiet wife who never fought back had been taking notes the whole time. In Italian, in English, in the universal language of receipts. The mediation room was smaller than I'd imagined. Fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, one flickering in the corner like a dying heartbeat. I sat on the left side of the long table in my Armani suit, the charcoal one I'd worn to close my first 8-figure deal. Fabric crisp and expensive against my skin. Across from me, Marco hunched in a suit I'd never seen before. Polyester blend from somewhere discount, the shoulders pulling awkwardly, a button hanging by a thread. His lawyer Vincent sat beside him, briefcase open, papers scattered like he'd given up organizing them weeks ago. My lawyer Daniel arranged his documents with surgical precision, each folder labeled, each tab color-coded. The mediator, Judge Patricia Hoffman, retired, 60-something with reading glasses on a chain, sat at the head of the table, my forensic accounting report open in front of her. She hadn't said anything for 3 minutes, just kept flipping pages, her eyebrows climbing higher with each one. Judge Hoffman finally looked up, removing her glasses slowly. "Mr. Romano." Her voice had that careful neutrality judges cultivated, but something underneath, disbelief maybe, or secondhand embarrassment. "You contributed $4,217 to a household with combined expenses of..." She checked the page again. "$673,000 over 3 years?" Marco's hands were shaking on the table. I watched his thumb pick at a hangnail, drawing a tiny bead of blood he didn't seem to notice. "Your Honor, please." His voice cracked on the second word. "We built a life together, a home, a marriage. That's worth something. You can't just reduce 3 years to numbers on a spreadsheet." He gestured at Daniel's folders like they'd personally betrayed him. I leaned forward, keeping my voice level, cold, factual. "He built nothing, Your Honor. He funded nothing. He contributed nothing, except requests for more money." My hands were folded on the table, perfectly still, nails filed and polished the previous day. "I bought the penthouse before we married. I paid every mortgage payment, every renovation, every piece of furniture. His name isn't on the deed. It was never on the deed. He built exactly what he paid for, $4,000 worth of groceries we ate together." The door burst open. No knock, no warning. Just my mother-in-law Francesca exploding into the room in a black dress too formal for mediation, her Cartier bracelet catching the fluorescent light. "This is a farce," she screamed, her accent thick with rage. The bailiff stationed outside grabbed her arm, but she yanked free, stabbing a finger in my direction. "You destroyed my son. You are a demon." Judge Hoffman stood, her chair scraping back. "Ma'am, this is a closed hearing. You need to— I am his mother." Francesca's voice cracked on the word. "I have a right to be here. She is stealing from my family." 2 bailiffs now, one on each arm, already lifting her toward the door. Marco half stood, then sat back down, trapped between defending his mother and not making things worse. "Mrs. Romano, you leave now, or you'll be held in contempt," Judge Hoffman said, her voice iron now. Francesca's curses echoed down the hallway even after the door slammed shut, profanity colorful enough to make the court reporter's fingers pause on her stenotype. The silence that followed felt heavier. Marco broke it, his voice desperate, grasping. "I'll accept a settlement. $100,000. That's fair, right? That's reasonable for 3 years of..." He stopped when Daniel started laughing. Not a chuckle, a genuine, shocked laugh that made the court reporter look up. "100,000? Daniel repeated. "For what exactly? For grocery contributions that averaged $116 per month? For the privilege of having married Miss Chen? For..." "That's enough, counsel," Judge Hoffman interrupted, but her mouth twitched at the corners. She reviewed the final page, signed something, slid it to her clerk. Mr. Romano, based on the prenuptial agreement you signed, the financial records, and the complete absence of commingled funds, I'm ruling that you are entitled to exactly what you contributed to the marriage." She looked at him over her reading glasses. $4,217.63. Miss Chen will write you a check today." Marco's face went white, then red, then white again. But the penthouse is Miss Chen's separate property, purchased before marriage. The investment properties, also Miss Chen's separate property, never titled jointly. My mother's apartment, my brother's business, those were gifts, were loans, Judge Hoffman corrected, checking Daniel's documentation. Per the signed loan agreements Miss Chen's attorney has filed, your family members have 90 days to begin repayment plans or face collections proceedings. I pulled a pen from my purse, the Mont Blanc Marco had given me on our first anniversary, engraved with Forever M. My thumb traced over the words while Judge Hoffman's clerk arranged the final divorce decree in front of me. The irony wasn't lost on me, signing my freedom with a pen from the man I was divorcing. The nib scratched across paper, my signature darker and more decisive than it had been on our marriage license 3 years ago. Marco watched, his mouth opening and closing like he wanted to speak but had run out of words. Daniel slid a check across the table. $4,217.63, made out to Marco Romano, the beginning and end of what he'd earned from 3 years of marriage. Vincent packed his briefcase with defeated efficiency. Marco just sat there, staring at the check like it might transform into something bigger if he looked long enough. I stood, smoothing my skirt, the Armani fabric perfect under my palms. Judge Hoffman handed me my copies. Property deeds stamped and sealed, investment accounts confirmed, business holdings untouched. Everything I'd built and protected now officially, legally, permanently mine. "Congratulations, Miss Chen," she said quietly, "though I suspect you don't need it." I smiled, small, brief, genuine. "Thank you, Your Honor." At the door I paused, looked back one last time. Marco was still sitting there with his $4,000 check. His mother's voice probably still ringing in his ears from the hallway, his family's unpaid loans probably calculating in his head. He wanted a settlement. He wanted compromise, negotiation, some middle ground where he could walk away with enough money to soften the blow of his own stupidity. Instead, he got exactly what he'd invested, a receipt for 3 years of being a bad investment. The door closed with a soft click behind me, not a slam, not dramatic. Just final, complete, done. In the hallway, Francesca was gone, probably escorted from the building. The marble floors gleamed under track lighting, and through the windows I could see New York spreading out below, millions of people going about their lives completely unaware that in this small mediation room, a marriage had just been reduced to its true value, the cost of groceries and nothing more. My heels clicked toward the elevator. Behind me, the mediation room door opened. Marco's silhouette appeared in the doorway, backlit, his mouth forming words I couldn't hear and didn't need to. The elevator arrived with a cheerful ding. I stepped inside. The doors slid shut on his face, on his outstretched hand, on whatever final plea he thought might change mathematics. Going down, always down, toward the street, toward freedom, toward the rest of a life where nobody would ever mistake my generosity for weakness again. The real estate photographer's camera clicked through my penthouse, capturing angles that would make buyers fall in love with marble countertops I'd stopped seeing months ago. 6 months since the divorce, and every surface still whispered with ghosts. Marco's coffee ring on the kitchen island that never quite buffed out, the corner where Francesca had stood criticizing my decorating choices, the dining table where 50 boarding passes had been distributed and mine had been deliberately omitted. My agent Rachel stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, tablet in hand, frowning at numbers. "Alexandra, the market is perfect right now, peak selling season, but if we list at the price you're asking, you'll lose at least $200,000. Maybe wait 6 months? A year?" She looked at me like I'd suggested burning money in the fireplace. I was folding a cashmere throw, the one Marco's mother had gifted me, the one that had cost $3,000 of my money after I'd reimbursed Isabella for picking it out. My hands smoothed the fabric one last time before dropping it in the donation box. "I don't care about the money, Rachel. List it today. I want it gone." The villa appeared on my laptop screen at 2 a.m. 3 weeks of searching Italian real estate sites, my eyes burning from blue light, coffee going cold beside me. Stone walls the color of honey, terracotta roof tiles, olive trees and vineyards stretching toward hills that turned purple at sunset. The listing was in Italian, which meant fewer American buyers had seen it, which meant I had a chance. Located in Tuscany 90 kilometers from Florence, 175 kilometers from Rome, 3 hours from Francesca's apartment. Close enough that they'd know, close enough that every time someone mentioned my name, they'd have to think about the American woman who'd bought a piece of their country without their permission, without their approval, without their Italian husband. I clicked schedule viewing and booked a flight for the following week. Marco had always talked about Italy like he owned it, like being born there gave him some deed, some title, some exclusive access I could never earn. "You wouldn't understand," he'd say, when I'd suggest visiting somewhere other than his family's tourist traps. "It's not for outsiders." He'd gate-kept restaurants, neighborhoods, traditions, the language itself, even while spending my money and sleeping in my bed. Now I was buying 4 acres of Tuscan hillside, a 17th-century villa, and a view of vineyards that had been producing wine since before America existed. The irony tasted better than any vintage his family had ever poured me. I signed the purchase agreement in the lawyer's office in Florence, my signature bold and certain, no husband's name required beside it. The keys were heavy in my palm, medieval iron that had opened this door for 300 years. Marco had tried to make Italy his weapon. I'd just made it my home. The villa's kitchen was smaller than my penthouse's, the appliances older, the countertops scarred with decades of use. I stood at the stove on my first night, stirring pasta sauce I'd made from tomatoes bought at the village market, drinking wine from a glass that didn't match anything, no one to impress, no one to cook for, no one asking when dinner would be ready or why I hadn't made enough for unexpected guests. The windows were open, warm September air carrying the sound of cicadas and someone's dog barking in the distance. I ate standing up at the counter, sauce dripping onto my t-shirt, not caring, not performing, not being watched. My shoulders dropped 2 inches. Something in my chest that had been clenched for 3 years finally uncurled. I finished the entire bottle of wine myself, stumbled up the stone stairs to my bedroom, and slept 10 hours without waking once. The Florence market on Saturday was crowded, tourists and locals jostling for space between stalls of leather goods and fresh produce. I was examining tomatoes, speaking Italian to the vendor about heirloom varieties, when I felt someone staring. Leonardo stood 3 stalls away, Marco's cousin, the one who'd laughed so hard at breakfast that he'd choked, the one who still owed me $50,000. Our eyes met, his face strained of color. He looked at his wife, then back at me, then grabbed his wife's elbow and turned away quickly, pulling her in the opposite direction. She protested, "What are you doing? I wanted to see the—" But he was already disappearing into the crowd, almost running like I was something dangerous he'd narrowly escaped. I turned back to the tomatoes, smiled at the vendor, and bought 2 kilos. Leonardo would tell the family he'd seen me. They'd know I wasn't hiding. They'd know I'd stayed. My neighbors in the village were named Paolo and Lucia, both in their 70s, married 52 years, running the vineyard adjacent to my property. They'd invited me for dinner the second week, served me pasta made by Lucia's grandmother's recipe, poured wine from their own grapes, asked about my life with genuine curiosity and zero expectation. When I'd tried to pay them for the wine they'd gifted me, Paolo had looked offended. "You are our neighbor," he'd said simply. "This is what neighbors do. No hidden costs, no strings attached, no ledger keeping track of who owed what. Just generosity that didn't require a receipt." I'd cried in my car on the way home, surprising myself with the ferocity of it, grieving for 3 years spent with people who'd never once treated me this way. My business had exploded in ways I hadn't anticipated. Selling the Manhattan penthouse had freed up capital. Buying the Tuscan villa had opened doors, literally and figuratively. Wealthy Americans wanted European properties, and now I had expertise on the ground, connections with Italian real estate attorneys, knowledge of markets Marco's family had thought they'd kept exclusive. Within 6 months, I'd brokered 3 villa sales, 2 apartment purchases in Florence, and a vineyard acquisition worth $3 million. My income had doubled. I was flying between New York and Italy monthly, building something bigger than I'd had before, something that was entirely mine, something Marco's name had never touched. I drove to Rome on a Tuesday, curious, maybe masochistic. Francesca's neighborhood looked smaller than I remembered, the buildings more tired, the street narrower. I found her apartment building, parked across the street, watched for 20 minutes. The renovations I'd paid for were already showing age. The paint on the window frames was chipping. The expensive marble countertops visible through the kitchen window looked dated now, installation trends having moved on. $30,000 I'd spent for renovations that would look shabby in 5 years. Meanwhile, my Tuscan villa had stood for 3 centuries and would stand for 3 more. The difference was almost funny. Almost. I started the engine and drove away without looking back. They'd thought excluding me from Rome would break me, would prove I didn't belong, would send me home wounded and ashamed. Instead, I'd bought a better piece of Italy than any of them would ever own. I'd claimed the country they'd tried to gatekeep, planted my flag in Tuscan soil, and built a life so far beyond their small ambitions they couldn't even see it from where they stood. The email arrived on a Thursday morning while I was having coffee on my terrace, September sun warm on my shoulders, the valley below me turning golden with harvest. Subject line: Francesca's 71st birthday celebration. Sender: Isabella Romano, my former sister-in-law, the one who'd shrieked with laughter at my exclusion, who still hadn't repaid the $43,000 I'd spent on her wedding. I opened it with my pinky finger, like the email itself might be contaminated. Dear Alexandra, it began, formal and stiff. We know last year was difficult for everyone. But family is important, and Mama would very much like you to attend her birthday dinner this Saturday in Rome. 7 p.m. at Trattoria Giulia. We hope you can join us. No apology, no acknowledgement, just an invitation delivered like a summons, like I should be grateful to be included this time. 1 year. 365 days since the breakfast table, since the boarding passes, since guess we miscounted. The timing was almost poetic. I read the invitation 3 times, looking for subtext, for traps, for whatever game they were playing now. Trattoria Giulia, I looked it up. A modest neighborhood restaurant, family style, red checkered tablecloths, no reservations needed, main courses averaging €20. Nothing like Villa Adelina, nothing like the Michelin-starred catering or the champagne towers or the 300 imported roses. They'd gone from my $40,000 deposit to a restaurant where tourists went for authentic, Italian food, and locals avoided. The downgrade was spectacular. I booked a flight to Rome that afternoon. My decision surprised even me. For 3 days I questioned it. Was I being petty, vindictive? Was I healed enough to face them, or would seeing Marco undo 6 months of reconstruction? But Saturday morning I woke up in my Tuscan villa, looked at the view I owned, and knew exactly why I was going. Not for closure, not for revenge, but to show them what they'd lost. To walk in wearing my success like armor and walk out leaving them with the bill for their own mediocrity. I drove to Florence, bought a dress, Italian designer, deep emerald silk, cost more than their entire dinner would, and drove to Rome with the windows down, singing along to the radio, feeling lighter with every kilometer. The restaurant was exactly what I'd imagined. Cramped, dimly lit, plastic flowers on tables that wobbled. I stood outside for a moment, watching through the window. Marco's family clustered around 2 tables pushed together, Francesca at the head wearing too much jewelry, trying too hard to look happy. Leonardo was there, the cousin who'd fled from me at the market. Isabella and her husband. Uncle Antonio, Aunt Julia, a few others I didn't recognize. No Marco yet, probably late, probably still living in his mother's guest room. I pushed open the door. The bell above it chimed. Every head turned. Conversations didn't just pause, they died. Forks froze midway to mouths. Francesca's wineglass stopped an inch from her lips. Someone's knife clattered against their plate. The silence stretched, expanded, filled the room like floodwater. I walked to the head of the table where Francesca sat, her face cycling through shock, confusion, anger, landing somewhere near panic. From my purse I pulled an envelope, cream-colored, expensive paper stock, sealed with my initials embossed in gold. I placed it in front of her gently, like setting down a bomb. "Happy birthday, Francesca." My voice was steady, warm even, like I was delivering good news. Her hands shook as she opened it. Inside, $340,000 in receipts. Every check I'd written, every transfer I'd made, every expense I'd covered, printed and organized chronologically. 3 years of generosity itemized and totaled. And on top, a note I'd written in my best Italian handwriting. "Happy birthday. Here's what family cost me. You're welcome." Her face went from white to red to purple, her mouth opening and closing like a fish drowning in air. Marco appeared in the doorway behind me, probably coming from the bathroom, stopping dead when he saw my back. "Alexandra?" His voice was smaller than I remembered, uncertain, almost frightened. I turned, giving him the full effect of my dress, my confidence, my complete and total indifference to his existence. "Marco." I nodded like he was a stranger I was acknowledging out of politeness. He moved toward me, hands outstretched. "Can we talk, please? I've been trying to call. I wanted to apologize. I'm not here for closure," I interrupted, my voice cutting clean through his rambling. "I'm not here to forgive you. I'm not here for reconciliation or apologies or whatever speech you've been practicing." I stepped closer, watched him instinctively step back. "I'm here to show you I'm thriving, that everything you took from me was worth less than what I built after you were gone." The table had erupted in whispers, Italian and English mixing, people reading over Francesca's shoulder, pointing at numbers, doing math, arguing about who had borrowed what. Isabella was crying, mascara running, probably calculating that her wedding debt was listed. Leonardo had his head in his hands. Aunt Julia was yelling at Uncle Antonio about something. Francesca just sat there holding my note, reading it again and again like the words might change. I picked up my purse, checked my watch. 10 minutes, exactly as planned. At the door I paused, looked back at the chaos I'd created with just one envelope. "Enjoy your dinner," I called out. "I believe the bill will be about €300. Split 13 ways, that's roughly €23 each. I'm sure you can manage." The bell chimed as I left. Behind me the arguments got louder. Someone was demanding to know if this was a joke. Francesca was saying something that sounded like a prayer or a curse. I drove back to Tuscany with the windows down again, the night air cool against my face, stars visible in ways they never were in Manhattan. They'd wanted me to be family. They'd wanted access to my accounts and my generosity and my desperate need to belong. Instead, I'd become something better, free, untethered, uncompromised, whole. That birthday party they'd stolen from me a year ago, the one where they'd excluded me for sport, where they'd laughed at my humiliation, had given me the greatest gift, the truth. Some families were built on love, on loyalty, on genuine connection that survived hardship and disagreement. Marco's family had been built on my bank account. They'd constructed their happiness on a foundation of my money and my silence and my willingness to be used. I'd demolished that foundation with 3 phone calls and 6 months of legal precision. And now I'd built myself a palace instead, stone walls that would stand for centuries, vineyards that produced wine sweeter than any revenge, a life so completely mine that no one could ever take it away. The stars wheeled overhead. My villa waited in the dark, lights I'd left on glowing warm against the Tuscan hills. I was going home. Finally, actually, completely home.